I, 35F, met my husband Vince, 36M, after he saved me from drowning at a pool party when I was 18. I took him out for lunch the following week to thank him for saving me, and we soon fell in love and began dating. At the time, Vince worked a blue-collar job while I was studying in university. We ended up getting married and Vince supported me throughout my entire education up until I got my PhD. Vince always told me that he wanted to study in university but had learning disabilities that made it difficult for him to study in a classroom. At times he was embarrassed by the fact that he had to work twice as hard compared to people around him, but I always found that to be admirable about him. When I finished my studies and got a well-paying job, I convinced Vince to give his dream of studying another go. Last year he was finally accepted into a nursing program at our local university. He is working hard to achieve his dream and I'm incredibly proud of him. Last week my friend Alba, 36F, came to visit with her son so our children could play together. Alba was my roommate during my first year in university. She began dating her husband Leo around the same time I started dating Vince. Leo was an obnoxious law student who later on became an even more obnoxious attorney. He was a know-it-all who prided himself on his intelligence, which for some reason attracted Alba. At the time Alba would sometimes tease me that I could do better than Vince, and would offer to set me up with one of Leo's law school buddies, but I would always refuse and she eventually dropped the subject. Alba and Leo are currently going through a nasty divorce that stems from him cheating on her. Quite frankly, he is dragging her through the mud and is using connections to try and leave her as penniless as possible. As we were chatting and catching up, Alba began to express concern over the fact that my eldest son, 7M, was recently diagnosed with dyslexia. Alba began telling me how she is worried that my son will be academically challenged like his father and what that could entail for his future. Before I could respond, she told me how I should have married someone smart while I had the chance so I would have kids like hers. Alba's son is an incredibly bright boy and a straight A student. I told Alba her advice was unnecessary and reminded her where marrying for intelligence got her. I then proceeded to tell her that I would rather have my son grow up to be an honest, hard-working person like his father than an academically gifted jerk who wasn't smart enough to know sleeping with his secretary could have consequences on his marriage like her husband. Alba was deeply hurt by what I've said and stormed out with her son. Some mutual friends are now chiming in and are telling me that I was too harsh on Alba for using her failing marriage to prove my point and should apologize. Comment 1. Okay, can I just say that intelligence doesn't have anything to do with dyslexia? That incredibly intelligent people can have it. And they can also have other learning disorders or be kinetic learners? Because for her to say that your husband isn't intelligent is just a level of arseholery that's completely unacceptable. Having an education v. No education is also not a measure of intelligence. Trust me. I have a PhD too. I also know a lot of brilliant people without college diplomas. Now that my rant is over. NTA, and while certainly you should be concerned if your child has a learning disability and you should pursue support for him, that doesn't make him stupid or otherwise lacking. Comment 2. NTA. Alba was enjoying the view from her high horse after being dragged through the mud. She thought, here is my opportunity to show I'm still better than someone else, and took a way lower blow than you did. She attacked your innocent young child's intelligence and basically said his future accomplishments won't matter when compared to her own kid. You on the other hand went after an obnoxious, cheating, whom she chose to be with. Hopefully Alba can get over herself, cause otherwise her son will have no friends. Comment 3. NTA for defending your son and husband, but your comments towards her were completely unnecessary and honestly irrelevant, so ultimately ESH. Your husband with dyslexia and a blue-collar job could cheat on you just as easily as her highly intelligent lawyer husband. A smart, academically gifted man can be extremely loyal and honest too. One has nothing to do with the other. There's no reason for you to insult her and act like she deserves to be cheated on for being someone that values and finds intelligence attractive, just like there was no reason for her to act like a learning disability is something to be ashamed of. My brother Nick, 35M, is married to Rachel, 34F, and is stepdad to her son Colton, 9M. Rachel and her ex split custody of Colton, so he's at their house 50% of the time, and the other 50% he's with his dad's family. Something that is kinda relevant is Nick does not play an active parenting role in Colton's life. He's basically the backup, the fun uncle figure, but parenting is only between Rachel and her ex, and Nick is not allowed to discipline Colton or handle parenting matters. So I have been dealing with Rachel alone on this issue. I have 2 boys. My oldest is 8 and my youngest is 4. Because my oldest and Colton are so close in age, Rachel wanted them to spend as much time together as possible, and she asked if we could take Colton after school in an informal agreement. We had agreed he could come to my house until 5 p.m, but when it came into practice, he would be here until 7 p.m. or later, and Rachel never picked Colton up before then, even if I called. Colton was taught that if you're in a family member's home you can take what you like and don't have to ask. So while he was in my house he eat and drink so much of our stuff. In one day before, he drank an entire 6-pack of Sprite that he went outside to get, a big share bag of Doritos, 3 chocolate bars, a bag of gummy candies and cookies I had left out of the way for later. I spoke to him and said he should ask before taking in the future, and he told me he didn't need to ask, and his mom said he should eat when he wants to. I talked to Rachel about this and she scolded me for bringing this to Colton at all. She said if it's in my house he should be able to eat or drink as much of it as he likes. There was also the added fact that he was here for dinner time and I couldn't just let him sit there day after day and watch us eat, so I started making enough for him too, but then he'd take the things he liked off my son's plates and he'd leave what he didn't like, veggies and meats usually, and less nuggets. Again, this was a conflict with Rachel because I told Colton not to do it and tried to make him apologize. Colton told Rachel about it and she was pissed off at me for trying to discipline her son. I tried for a few weeks but it wasn't working, and so I pulled the plug on him being here. And now I say no, and I have told her he can't spend time at my house anymore. Rachel told me if he was my real nephew I wouldn't dismiss Colton so quickly. She also told me I'm taking my issues with her out on him and he's sad he can't spend time with his bestie cousin anymore. Comment 1. NTA, I've done that before to a niece. She is rude, grabs things, rude to adults, etc. She's 11, so not too young to know better. One time I corrected her and her mom tried to go off on me. I just told her that I am not there to teach her kids manners, she should teach her, and I am not part of her family team, as she calls it. I also let her know that I told my child that if someone is rude/mean to her, she has a right not to engage with them and no longer play with them, regardless if they are cousins or not. That kind of freaked her out because, surprise surprise, her kid has no friends. She's a bit better now but still rude. Comment 2. NTA, real or step, you have no obligation to Colton. If Rachel and Nick don't parent, and you aren't allowed to, Colton's in for a world of hurts as he grows up, but it doesn't mean that you have to put up with it. He's a poor influence on your kids, and disruptive to your family. I also doubt whether your son thinks Colton is his bestie. Comment 3. NTA. Colton clearly has not been taught manners or appropriate boundaries because his mother does not have reasonable manners or appropriate boundaries. She is constantly reinforcing the idea that he does not have to operate by the rules of your house or even show basic respect for you and your family. It is unfortunate that he misses his cousin, but maybe this is a rare opportunity for him to experience consequences of his actions. Maybe he will learn from that. Naomi, Tara and I are friends. Tara and I are from the same country and moved for work to another. Naomi is a local. So it's an intercultural friend group. We all flew to Tara's hometown for her wedding. It's a cross-cultural union, so they had 2 ceremonies to celebrate both the groom and bride's subcultures. We had helped Naomi with preparation and general know-how as it was her first time visiting or attending a wedding outside her culture. At the first wedding ceremony, Naomi got irked at women wearing the similar color and silhouettes as the bride. Literally no one gives a fudge about that here. I told her so, but it seemed to fall on deaf ears. I pointed out to her how some women had even worn their own wedding attires, just dressed down. Tara's sister had too. Again, deaf ears and absolutely stupid arguments. She started showing me TikToks about how it's the bride's friend's duty to spill drinks on people trying to upstage the bride. It's a global world. Doesn't matter the culture, respecting the bride is important across them all. Absolutely asinine BS. When the party had reached high spirits, she actually started looking for a target. These women were sisters, aunts, in-laws, mothers' friends. Naomi isn't a professional prankster. It would have looked intentional too. I told my other friends what she was up to and we managed to end the night without an issue. She wasn't even the only American first-timer there. Other foreign guests were having a great time. What got into her. At the after-party, we jokingly told Tara about it. She laughed, called Naomi an ash, and told her not to create a scene. The next day was the second wedding ceremony. More than half the women wore very similar attires in the same color as Tara. Naomi was at it again. She almost did spill at the groom's aunt and filmed herself doing it. I was too hungover plus drunk plus tired plus distracted plus pissed to babysit her. I had to ask her to leave. She obviously didn't want to but missed out on the second wedding reception. That night I texted Tara to tell her everything. She sent me a pat on the back gif. But Naomi was real pissed. Still is. I did feel guilty, so I went above and beyond to make the rest of her trip nicer. Didn't let her pay for anything, including her stay and souvenirs. Took her to every place on her checklist. Got her a chauffeur-driven car, etc. She still thinks I was the ass, not her, because she missed out on the reception. Comment 1. NTA. You were put in a difficult situation where you had to choose between maintaining harmony at a friend's wedding and dealing with Naomi's inappropriate behavior. Weddings are important cultural events, and respecting the customs and norms of the culture hosting the wedding is essential. Naomi's insistence on following her own cultural norms at the expense of the bride's cultural practices was disruptive and disrespectful. Comment 2. NTA. Naomi seems like she needs to be served a big old slice of humble pie. US culture is not world culture, that's such an imperialist point of view. If only she could get her head out of her own ass, she might have learned that social norms we believe to be set in stone are actually very different from place to place. People think differently and pay respects in different ways. There's so much to learn if you just observe cultural practices that are different from your own. That's an essential part of travel. Instead, she judged them. Her loss. Comment 3. NTA. It seems you only asked her to leave the ceremony/reception, which isn't a big deal, considering she was trying to ruin it. I don't understand how she is told the culture is different, so wearing this is fine and still trying to cause a scene after being told not to. Maybe she would only listen to the bride if she said it. Not that she should have had to. Weddings are stressful without someone trying to spill wine on your guests. My husband, 34M, and I, 31F, recently threw a birthday party for our 3-year-old daughter. We also have 2 other little ones in the house, 2F and 1M. My husband's dad decided that he wanted to stay with us for the party. He brought his wife, my Bill, and my Sil. We were hosting almost 100 people in our house. I ordered most of the items we needed for hosting/serving purposes and had the food catered. All we needed to do on the day of was move around our home to accommodate the tables/chairs/hosting equipment and set everything out. My Phil decided to spend most of the day in his room and away from the setup. His wife was constantly walking around and complaining about being asked to stay quiet since the baby was napping. As I was running around carrying large tables, moving furniture, decorating, watching children, etc., my husband's family was calling me mean names behind my back while also being no help at all, not even hanging out with the kids that they were supposedly there to see. After the party, my family stuck around to help clean up. My husband's family also stuck around, apparently just to judge. My Phil, his wife, Sil, and Bill all stayed out of the way and napped while we cleaned up. My Mill and her husband sat around and watched my family clean up. After my Mill and her husband left, 3 hours after the party ended, they were apparently talking about how weird it was that my family was helping and how gross it was that everything needed to be cleaned right away. They said that my kids are probably going to have problems as they grow up since I keep them in such a sterile environment. My house is in no way perfect, but after hosting that many people there is definitely some cleaning to do before letting 3 under 3 run around the house again. I told my husband that his family is no longer allowed to stay with us when they're in town for events and they need to leave when the event is done. I'm tired of feeling judged in my own space. He says I'm being too harsh and that they're just not as clean as we are. He thinks since they didn't actively hinder us and didn't make these comments directly to me, I should just brush it off. Comment 1. NTA. I think you need more discussion with your husband because it seems you have totally different interpretations of this situation. You described they were needy and critical guests, were inconsiderate, and essentially treated it like a vacation at a hotel, whereas he is only evidently commenting on their remarks about the home being clean. Honestly, his perspective on this still sucks to me. Being criticized in your own home is ridiculous, but the most glaring thing here is your husband seeming to ignore the bigger issues that contributed to you wanting to draw this line. This is a reasonable boundary to draw in my opinion. I mean, how much should you be expected to cater to inconsiderate, ungracious guests who aren't even going to treat you and your family respectfully in the process? Comment 2. NTA. Folks who can't follow the rules when they are a guest in someone else's house are immature as hell. Why isn't the husband speaking with them about their behavior? Given their snarky comments, it seems like he needs to be the one to let them know they are no longer welcome to stay over and why that is.